Do you remember your first friend? I most definitely do. I was a young kid in Chicago, Illinois, and became really good friends with someone that was very important to me and taught me an important life lesson. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this week's theme here on my podcast is going to be about friendship. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Now, working as a psychotherapist for so long, I have learned really important lessons, and I've learned things that impact people's lives. I've learned things that makes a real difference in people's lives. And one of the things that is significant in our lives are friendships. Friendships matter because they impact our quality of life. They impact how close we feel to the world. They impact how connected we feel to those around us. They make activities better. Like, think about it. If you want to go to like a comedy movie, it's much better when you have someone sitting next to you that you're close to that you can laugh with. Or if you want to go to a coffee shop, it's often better that you go with a friend that you can bond with and share joyous experiences with. A lot of times when people come to therapy, actually, one of the reasons that they come is they are depressed and they're sad and they're upset. And one of the biggest contributors to that is feeling isolated and alone. See, friendship is more than just having someone to play with as a child or talk to as an adult. Friendship is kind of the thing that gives life meaning. Other than your romantic relationships, it's one of the things that matters most to you and how you experience the world around you. And thinking about this topic, I was thinking about my very first friend, literally where I learned the value of friendship. Now, growing up in Chicago, being born in Chicago, I often say my childhood was split between the early part, which was in Chicago, Illinois, and then later on moved to Boston, Massachusetts. And my next door neighbor, his name was Wilbur. And Wilbur was my very first friend. And I still remember the feeling to this day of waking up, as like a 4-year-old on Saturday morning. And my parents, because we live right next door, my parents were really good friends with his parents. And I still remember the feeling of waking up on Saturday morning and asking my mom if I could go next door and play with Wilbur or watch cartoons with Wilbur. I still remember the feeling on Saturday mornings of my parents or his parents or both parents sitting on the front steps of our house watching us play in front of the house. And we were riding like big wheels. Big wheels were like these plastic tricycle type things. And Wilbur and I would ride the bikes as these big wheel things. We'd ride them as fast as we could, and we'd jerk the wheel and try to like slide. And we thought we were the coolest thing going by doing that. And every Saturday I wanted to play with Wilbur, and Wilbur would come over to my house and I'd ask if he could sleep over and he'd ask if I could sleep over. But I started from that very early age realizing how important and powerful it is to spend time with other people and share joyous experiences. Recently I went back to Chicago and I went back to that house in that old neighborhood, and these memories of me playing with Wilbur came flashing. I remember looking at that front yard, and back then the front yard looked like it was the biggest massive piece of land in the world. And I go back a couple of months ago and it's like this really tiny patch of grass in front of my house, my old house. But it's an important lesson. I remember shortly after that, we moved to Massachusetts, and I was so sad because I didn't have a friend, and I started looking for someone that I could spend time with and do fun things with. And to this very day, I'm so grateful for the people that I have in my life, because they give life meaning, they give life balance, they give life purpose, and they cause you to value life. And I want to encourage you guys to just look around your lives and think about the friendships that you have. Those really close friends, they're kind of like family that you weren't born with. And I think that's special, and I think that's magical. And I know from my work in the field of psychotherapy that it gives life meaning, value, and purpose. So if you're feeling down or feeling out or not feeling like yourself, one of the biggest things you can do to like reconnect with yourself is to reconnect with meaningful friendships. The kind of friendships that believe in you, the kind of friendships that impact your life, the kind of friendships that make a difference. So what I want you to do, I want to encourage you to just look around your life for those really meaningful friendships and just think a little bit about what they mean to you, how you connect with them, what role they play in your life, and let them know, like tell them, communicate with them. You know, I haven't talked to Wilbur in I don't know how long. Years after moving from Chicago, I learned that his parents were in a bad car accident and they passed away. But you know, I think I'm going to see if I can dig around on social media and see if I can find Wilbur, because I'd love to say thank you to him for be the first person that taught me the importance of friendship. Thank you so much for being here today. Please do me a huge favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms, or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can do that at Apple Podcast or wherever it is you enjoy consuming your podcast. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. It's not uncommon for people to start off a statement with things like, you know, if I could teach you one thing, or if I could leave you with one message, or if I could give you one gift. But for me, there are a few really important things that I would like to impact you with, a few really important things I'd like to leave you with, a few really important gifts I'd like to give you. And one of them is related to probably the most significant friendship I've ever had in my life. And that is my friendship with Dr. Adam Frower. And I'm going to talk about that on today's episode of this podcast and share with you why it's so important, and hopefully it'll impact and touch your life as well. Welcome back to Aha Moments, where once again, I'm Elliott Connie. I'm going to be sharing the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life in a way that will make a difference for you. And without question, one of the most significant things that's happened in my life is my friendship with Adam. So how I met Adam was, we're both in the field of marriage and family therapy, and we had a mutual friend all the way back in 2008 who thought it would be a good idea for us to meet. And at this conference, which is actually the first international conference I ever attended, it was actually in the state in which I live, in Texas, but it was actually like a big major international conference that is in different cities every year. It just happened to be in a city within driving distance of me in 2008. And I met Adam. And when you see me and Adam together, no two people could ever look more different. The way that we dress, talk, act, our style, our way of being. He is white, I am black. Our backgrounds are different. He comes from a very high educated, affluent background out in Utah, and I come from a very low educated, financially not affluent background in inner city Chicago and then later Boston, Massachusetts. But somehow we formed a friendship that is almost indescribable. In 2010, we got very, very close and have been working together. Our families are very close. His children call me Uncle Elliott. My mom, every time I talk to my mom, she asks me to give Adam a well wish for her and ask me how Adam, like, we are very close. So why am I talking about this, and why do I think it's important? Because I think you need to open your mind and heart to having people come into your life that are very different from you. I think difference enriches life. One of the things that Adam and I often talk about is how sad racism and prejudice are. Not just because of the oppressive nature of it and the harmful nature of it and all of those things, which is all true, but also how personally sad it is that people, instead of embracing difference and allowing it to enrich your life, people fear difference and they shun it. And you don't even realize that you are making your life less rich. You're making your life less remarkable. You're making your life less amazing. I think both Adam and I would say one of the most amazing things that we've done is we let someone who is different into our lives, and it's caused us both to have a richer life experience. I have dragged Adam, at times kicking and screaming, into circumstances that he wouldn't have otherwise been in because it's not his personality. And he has dragged me, at times kicking and screaming, into circumstances that I wouldn't have otherwise been in either. I think sometimes our nature as human beings is to stay in our comfort zone and surround ourselves with people that we're comfortable with and surround ourselves with people who look, walk, talk, and act like us. But I think one of the greatest things that I've ever done is open my mind and my heart to experience something different, to experience a true difference, to experience and allow someone who on the surface I have almost nothing in common with, but it turns out deep in our hearts we have so much in common. We're so much more aligned than we are different. But the only way that we could discover that is by allowing those differences to draw us closer as opposed to repelling us. So what's the thing that matters to me and why am I talking about this? It's because I want all of you to have enriched lives. I want all of you to have enriched experience. I want all of you to have the kind of experiences that ignite your life and really, really give you the sense of value, purpose, and meaning that I think some of us just lack. I think some of us, we just don't experience them. But for me, that is what has made my life wealthy. It's not about money, it's about experiences. It's about relationships. And if you really, really want to be wealthy, you have to focus on experiences and relationships. And because of Adam and his family, I feel like I am truly, truly wealthy. So what I want you guys to do, I want to challenge you to walk around this life with an open heart and an open mind and allow different people who have different cultures and backgrounds to enter into it. And I promise you, it'll make your life more rich. Thank you so much for being here today. Please share this podcast on your social media or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. I want you guys to be able to connect as often as you like. And you can do that on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you like to consume your podcast. And I will see you tomorrow. Friendship is a very, very rare and special thing. In fact, it is so rare that I was looking around for famous examples of friendship. I was looking around for examples from pop culture in friendship, and I kept finding, bad examples of friendships, and I kept finding difficult examples of friendships. But I found one that I think exemplifies a healthy dynamic and healthy friendships that I want to talk about, and that's what today's episode is about. So, of course, I'm Elliott Connie, and for years I've worked as a psychotherapist. But today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. We're going to continue our talk about friendship and kind of go deeper into it. And I wanted to give you an example of a friendship that somebody famous and well-known and something that we would recognize. But friendships is so rare. Successful friendships are so rare. It was actually hard to find an example. I remember a few years ago, there was a TV show called Mythbusters. And there were two guys on the show, Adam and Jamie were the two stars of the show. And it turns out they weren't friends. On the show, they looked like they work well together. They looked like really good friends. They get along. But it turns out behind the scenes, they were not friends. They did not get along, never spoke off screen, and when the show ended, they haven't spoken since. I saw an interview with Adam, and that is what he said, and it was almost heartbreaking. I think one of the other kind of popular examples of a friendship breaking down was Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Those of you who are sports fans know that Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen were often referred to as Batman and Robin. When they were playing professional basketball together for the Chicago Bulls, they were about as successful of a partnership that had ever existed in sports. They were really, really successful. And in a recent book Scottie Pippen wrote, he talked very badly about Michael Jordan. He said some really, really horrible things about Michael Jordan. And in a documentary that Michael Jordan released, he made Scottie Pippen look not so great. And the sports world exploded saying, I thought these guys were close friends. Turns out, not so much. So friendship is really, really such a rare thing. But one example that I did find of friendship that I wanted to demonstrate to you guys, I wanted to use as an example, I found it in reading a book. There's a book called The Book of Joy. It was written by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu from South Africa. Because what a really healthy friendship does, it's not do we have fun together? Are we successful together? A really good friendship is loyal, dependable, and brings out the best in each partner. And if you read this book, within the first few minutes, you will recognize that these two men are loyal to one another. These two men respect one another, another important component of friendship. These two men have a remarkable connection. Oftentimes, what sows friendships to be really strong is when each partner understands the world of the other. And sometimes for people in unique situations, it's really hard to feel understood or to feel connected because you're in such a rare, unique situation. And the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu are two like global religious leaders, so they kind of got each other. But this is probably the greatest example of friendship that I've ever seen. And you gotta find people in your world that impact you in that way, that create joy in your life, but are also really loyal and really dependable, that understand you, make your life better, make you smile, stand up for you, make sacrifices for you. If you have that kind of friendship, cherish it, because they're very, very rare. So rare, in fact, that I had a difficult time as I was thinking about examples in pop culture of friendships. And if you don't have that kind of friendship, keep looking. If you don't have that kind of friendship, keep building, keep connecting, because that kind of friendship is life-changing and means the world to people. So for today, that's what I want you to do. I want you to just look around your life. If you have that kind of friendship, be grateful. That's what I want you to do. I want you to look around your life. If you have that kind of friendship, be grateful. And if you haven't met that friend yet, keep searching, because they're out there. And once you meet them, your entire life will change. Thank you so much for being here today. Please do me a huge favor and share this podcast with your friends on social media, or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. Being a friend is sometimes difficult. Being there for your friends means sometimes you have to do really, really hard things. And today, on the Aha Moments, we're going to talk about how do you support your friends when they're going through difficult times and be there for them in a way that helps them feel valued and healing and get through the challenging thing that they're being faced with at that moment. Welcome back to the Aha Moments. I'm Elliott Connie, a psychotherapist, and here every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. You know, not all the time is being a friend like meeting up at happy hour and having a laugh and drinking a beer and palling around and watching movies together and doing really fun things. Sometimes being a friend means supporting one another through really, really hard things. I want to talk to you about how to exactly do that. And I'm going to share something that happened in my life that was difficult relatively recently, where I learned that someone wasn't really a friend to me. There was this woman, I met her in our profession, and I thought she was like a friend. I would have considered her a friend, and, we would meet for coffee here and there, and we would do things here and there. And, I, just like everybody else, I go through really hard things, and I was going through something really, really difficult. And in a conversation with her about that difficulty, she judged me quite harshly, actually, and said, like, you are this type of person, that type of person, and it was super hurtful. And I said to her, like, none of that is true. I was going through a really hard thing. And when you're a friend, you give your friends grace, and you give your friends the opportunity to explain, and you give your friends the opportunity to know that, like, you're not a bad person or doing bad things. You're just going through a hard moment, and you let your friend kind of come back to center. And it reminds me, as I talk about this topic today, like the importance of one of the things you do when your friends are going through really hard things is you don't judge them. You have to partner them. You have to be a soft place for your friend to land, because sometimes you're the only place where they can land. And that's what life is like. Like, I have a friend. I realized what true friendship was. Like, one of my closest friends, I've talked about him on this podcast before. His name is Matthew. And we were in college. A friend of mine ran up to me and said, Matthew said all of these things behind your back. And I remember, like, there was a time in my life, like the earlier life, I would have heard those things. I would have gotten mad at Matthew, and, me and Matthew might have even had an argument, or maybe even a fight, or whatever it was. But this friend ran up to me and said, Matthew's saying all these horrible things behind your back. And I remember thinking, I don't believe that Matthew said those things. And if he did say those things, he said them for a good reason. And I didn't have any anger whatsoever towards Matthew. And that was the moment I knew that me and this dude are like friends for life. Like me and this dude are like the friendship had taken another step because I truly didn't care. If he actually did say the things that this person was accusing him of, I couldn't have cared less. And I just assumed if Matthew said those things, he needed to say them for whatever reason he needed to say them. And that was perfectly okay with me. Now, here we are almost 25 years later. And Matthew, and actually exactly 25 years later this year, me and Matthew are still extraordinarily close. Because that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, when your friends are going through hard times, you give them grace. You give them understanding. You give them support and not judgment. And it's really, really hard for us not to judge people. But that is such a critical, important lesson. In fact, I would go a step further and say, that's how we should live in this world. Not just with our friends who are going through difficult things, but just with people in general. Judgment is so harmful and isolating. Once you judge somebody, there's no coming back from that. If you paint me with the brush of like Elliott is this horrible person or Matthews or whatever, somebody's like this horrible person, they can't overcome your perception of them. So it's so important that we allow our friends to have hard moments and to say things they may have ultimately want to take back and to say things not quite right, because you're the soft place for them to express themselves in all of the breadth of their emotions, be they good or be they bad. You are the person that they are cherishing enough to share themselves with, and that is such a valuable role that we must take to heart. That is such a valuable role that we must cherish and we must consider very, very important. So that, to me, is one of the key contributors to friendship, is being the person that I'm not going to judge, I'm not going to criticize, I'm not going to hate, I'm going to love you, I'm going to allow you to have a moment, I'm going to allow you to be yourself, and I'm going to support you through that process. And I want you to look through your life and see who are the people around you that have supported you. And let's show gratitude to them. And let's take a moment to just thank them. The people who have supported you in your hard moments and your difficult times and the things that you struggle with, let's just take a moment to honor them and cherish them for a second. Because I think that's such a valuable thing to be able to do. Thank you so much for being here today. Please, please, please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcast. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So for this whole week, we have been talking about friendship and the importance of friendship and the value that friendship brings into life. But on this last day of this topic, we're going to talk about what do you do if finding and discovering friendships are challenging? How do you go about the task of making friends and living a type of life that brings friends into your world? So we're going to dive into that topic today and make sure that those of you out there listening that friendships are struggles and finding friends is a hard thing and connecting is a hard thing. Feeling lonely is difficult. We're going to talk about that today. Welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. One of the most difficult things that we can experience in our lives is like feeling lonely and disconnected from the world. But I'm going to say something today that I hope will inspire you, that I hope will help you, that I hope will make a difference for you. One of the reasons that we feel lonely and disconnected, it's actually not the world rejecting us. It's us not evolving and turning into ourselves. So I'm going to tell you when I started to learn this lesson. Like when I went to high school just like everybody else. It was super cliquey. You had to have the right friends and be in the right group. And I was a popular kid in high school. Like I played sports and, had girls I could flirt with. And me and my friends were like the most popular guys at school. And we had the popular lunch table in the cafeteria, like all of that stuff. There were kids that were the opposite. They were bullied and you never saw them talking to anybody and they didn't have a ton of friends and those sorts of things. And then I went to college. I went to a college called University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth. And in the art building were the kids that I recognized were the kids from high school that would, like at my school, were being bullied and picked on and didn't have a lot of girlfriends and didn't get invited to the right parties and didn't go to the dances and didn't do the social things and all that stuff. Now there's a building for the misfits, like the artists and the creatives. Like the way that the campus was, at least back then, was there was like an English building and a science building and a math building. And then there was this building that was just for the misfits, the creatives. And those were the kids that we would have picked on in high school. But now there was like a whole building of them, and you watched them kind of come into their own. And there was this one kid who went to high school with me who was one of those misfits, who was one of those people that we picked on, and not we, like I never really picked on people, but like got picked on in high school. And now I go to college with him, and I wasn't friends with him. I wasn't friends with him in high school, and I wasn't friends with him in college, but I noticed him. And you could see like a smile on his face that I didn't see in high school. He was surrounded by friends. Eventually I saw him walking around campus and going to the cafeteria, holding hands with a girl. And I realized he had found his people. And that's what allowed him to connect with people and develop a friend group and find a girlfriend and all of the things that make you feel connected to the world. Because if you want to feel connected to the world, you have to find your people. And the best way to find your people is to be yourself, is to be authentic, is to be exactly who you are, so that you can go off and participate in the world as your authentic self, and then thus attract the right people and repel the wrong people, and function in a world where you bring people into your circle that are the right people for you. That is how you make friends, is you surround yourself by people who are interested in the same hobbies, the same activities, the same kinds of things that you are interested in, and then your life becomes so different. And it becomes so different so quickly. That's what life is about. Like, that's the exciting thing. That's how you go about making friends. You have to be your authentic self and participate in things. Like, if you love sports, go do sporty things. If you love nerdy things, do nerdy things. If you love arts, go do artsy things. But be yourself. And that's how you bring people into your circle that will be connected to you. So what I want to ask you to do this week is to go and truly be your authentic self and engage in something that you truly, truly love in a passionate way. Join a Facebook group that's about an interest that you have. Go to the museum, go to the zoo, go to the park. Go do the thing that it excites you and be open to meeting people in that experience. That is how you make meaningful friendships and relationships. Hey, thank you so much for being here today. If you wouldn't mind, please do me a huge favor. Share this podcast on your social media platform, or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. I'm Elliott Connie, and please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple or on any other place where you listen to podcasts. I can't wait to see you on Monday.